Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started here. Good evening and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for July 21st, 2022. And at this time, I would like to call the meeting to order. The commissioners who are present for this evening's meeting are at City Hall and on Zoom. We also have staff from City Attorney and Clerk's offices, as well as the City Planning Department. If you're joining us on Zoom this evening, we can see that you are here. You may observe the meeting, however, your ability to be seen on screen and talk will be muted. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, you will be unmuted and then be able to comment. Please note that we cannot take questions until the public testimony portion. If you have a process question during the meeting, please email cityclerk@meridiancity.org and they will reply as quickly as possible. If you simply want to watch the meeting, we encourage you to watch the streaming channel on the city's YouTube channel. You can access that at meridiancity.org/live. With that, let's begin with the roll call. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Yearsley?
Here.
Commissioner Grace?
Here.
Commissioner Lorcher?
Here.
Commissioner Grove?
Here.
Commissioner Seal?
Here.
And absent are Commissioners Wheeler and Stoddard.
All right, thank you very much. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. This evening, Lavender Place subdivision H 2022-0036 and Slatestone subdivision H 2022-0039 will be open for the sole purpose of continuing to a regularly scheduled meeting. They will be open for that purpose alone. So if there's anybody here tonight to testify for those particular applications, we will not be taking public testimony on that this evening. We will also be swapping items number 4 and number 5 on the agenda. Could I get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Mr. Chair,
Yep, go ahead.
was that the right items that we're switching? Be clear, we're switching 5 and 6, right?
Yeah, let me look. We are swapping 5 and 6. My notes are wrong. Thank you. So with that, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
Moved.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, and we have one item on the consent agenda. We need to approve the minutes of the June 30th, 2022 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Can I get a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. This time, I'd like to briefly explain the public hearing process. We will open each item individually and begin with the staff report. Staff will report their findings on how the item adheres to the Comprehensive Plan and Unified Development Code. After staff has made their presentation, the applicant will come forward and present their case and respond to staff comments. They will have 15 minutes to do so. After the applicant is finished, we will open the floor to public testimony. Each person will be called on only once during the public testimony. The clerk will call the names individually of those who signed into our website in advance to testify. You will then be unmuted on Zoom, or you can come to the microphone in chambers. Please state your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes to address the commission. If you have previously sent pictures or presentations for the meeting, will be displayed on the screen, and you or the clerk will run the presentation. If you establish that you are speaking on behalf of a larger group like an HOA, where others from that group will allow you to speak on their behalf, you will have up to 10 minutes. After all those who have signed in advance have spoken, we will invite any others who may wish to testify. If you wish to speak on the topic, you may come forward in chambers, or if on Zoom, please press the raise hand button on the Zoom app. Or if you're only listening on a phone, please press *9 and wait for your name to be called. If you are listening on multiple devices, such as a computer and a phone, please be sure to mute those extra devices so we do not experience feedback and we can hear you very clearly. When you're finished, if the commission does not have any questions for you, you will return to your seat in chambers or be muted on Zoom and no longer have the ability to speak. And please remember, we will not call on you a second time. After all testimony has been heard by the applicant, the applicant will be given another 10 minutes to come back and respond. When the applicant is finished responding to questions and concerns, we will close the public hearing and the commissioners will have the opportunity to discuss and hopefully be able to make final decisions or recommendations to City Council as needed. So at this time, I would like to open hearing item H 2022-0036 Lavender Place subdivision for continuance. And my understanding is they would like to have this continued to August 4th. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay. Somebody would like to take a stab at that?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Grove, go ahead.
I'm move to continue file number H 2022-0036 Lavender Place subdivision to the hearing date of August 4th.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue file number H 2022-0036 to the date of August 4th, 2022. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Next, I would like to open up file number H 2022-0039 Silverstone subdivision for continuance. My understanding is they would like to continue this to the date of August 18th.
That was Slate Stone, correct? Not Silver.
That was Slate Stone subdivision. Yeah, did I say it different? Sorry about that.
Okay.
I'll take a motion on that.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Grove, go ahead.
I move to continue file number H 2022-0039 Slate Stone subdivision to the hearing date of August 18th.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to continue Silverstone subdivision H 2022-0039 to the date of August 18th, 2022. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, next we will open the file for file H 2022-0031 for Meridian Academy Playfield. We will begin with the staff report.
Greetings, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Alan Tiefenbach, planner with the city of Meridian. So this is a rezoning. The site consists of 13.8 acres zoned IL. It's located north of East Franklin Road between North Locust Grove and North Eagle Road. Quick history. In 1992, a conditional use permit was approved to allow an educational facility. An alternative high school with play field and a district maintenance facility have been subsequently constructed on the property. Directly adjacent and northwest of the property is a 4.5 acre lot also owned by the same applicant, and this also contains an additional maintenance facility. This is a proposal to rezone roughly half of this property from IL to CG to allow expansion, which would be the construction of a play field and an existing educational facility on the left. Fortunately, north is not up. Well, north is up here, and that's why you're seeing it sideways, because I don't operate well not looking at north up. So on the left is the site plan that they provided to me. Sorry again about the labels being sideways. On the right is the exhibit for the rezoning. So again, the applicant wants to construct a new play field, basically a grass softball field. Since the time of the original annexation and the conditional use permit, the IL zoning has been changed. So originally it allowed educational institutions by conditional use. Sometime after that original approval, that was written out so that you can no longer do educational institutions by primary use or by conditional use in industrial. However, there is the option, because this was already approved through a conditional use permit, the applicant did have the option of modifying the conditional use. The code allows you to do that. It's already approved. You can modify it. They don't want to do that, however. And the reason why is, if you can see my pointer, this is the existing school here. Here is an existing district maintenance facility. And I keep emphasizing district because this maintenance facility is not something that's customarily incidental just to this school. This is a primary use district facility for the whole school district. Reason why that's a problem is that, or the reason why this is the difference is, if that was just a little shop for the school, we could say it was associated with the school, it'd be allowed in a CG zone district. But in this case, because it's a separate use, it's actually only allowed in IL. And that is the reason why, if you look on the right, you will see this exhibit. And what they want to do is they want to carve out this area right here, and that's going to be CG. And then all the rest of it is going to remain IL. Again, that's because they want to make it a clean break. So they're going to do their sports field on the east side, and then they're going to keep everything as it is on the west side. Access to the existing school occurs from East Lanark Street, which is an industrial collector. There's nothing here right now. Right now, there is a master street map, and it shows that this will be the future alignment of an industrial collector. However, it's a little undecided about what the exact alignment of it is. ACHD does not have the final design. I don't think they have the estimate about when it's going to be built. We talked to ACHD about whether or not they wanted to keep that collector. And I might add that the master street map also shows a potential collector running north-south. ACHD's response is that they no longer want that north-south collector, but they do still want to see this east-west collector at some time built. Because the applicant is only doing a sports field as part of this application, planting grass really doesn't require a building permit. Staff has talked to the applicant about this. The applicant is amenable to having a development agreement, which would say that prior to building permit, whenever that occurs, that the applicant would dedicate 54 feet of right of way and to construct East Lanark Street as a 40-foot wide collector with curb, gutter, and sidewalk. This is what ACHD asked for, and the applicant is amenable to that. In addition, there was a couple of additional things that staff recommended be added to the development agreement. You can require a development agreement. There is not one now, but you can require a development agreement as part of a rezoning. The school is right across the street from existing residential. It has been there for a while, but they're bringing a sports field now directly fronting Franklin. I talked to the applicant about this, and this is not really like a standalone sports arena where they're going to have organized little league or something like that. This is a sports field just associated with the school, with the events of the school. That said, we still were a little concerned about lights or any kind of activities happening and the people that are the residents across the street being impacted by that. So we recommended that they restrict outdoor sports activities and the lighting to between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. and the applicant is amenable to that. And the other thing is that the comprehensive, the future land use map designates this property as civic. And the applicant is actually rezoning it to CG. So that doesn't exactly jive with the comprehensive plan. However, staff has recommended that there be a development agreement restriction that says this can only be used for an institutional facility. If they want to do anything other than a school, they'll have to come back in and do a development agreement modification. I understand that the applicant is also amenable to that. So really all we're doing, my long-winded explanation is that we're clipping out a little piece of CG so that they could put some grass in. With that, I will stand for questions.
All right, thank you very much. Would the applicant like to come forward? Good evening. If you can state your name and address for the record, and the floor is yours.
Good evening, Matthew Adams, 462 East Shore Drive, Eagle, Idaho. And I do have a presentation.
Do you have a, sorry.
So thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. Everything Alan said, we agree with. We're in agreement with the staff report. We are agreeable to the development agreement conditions that he listed. What I want to show you is what this play field, it's not a sports field, it's a play field. When that roadway gets constructed, they don't want to take the kids across a road for PE or activities. That's their only outdoor space. So once that's constructed, they need a play field on the same side. And so that's really, we're setting ourselves up so they can continue to maintain and operate that facility without going back for a CUP every single time. And I guess because of the rewrite to the IL zone, this is an important update for the school district. This is the same map that Alan showed you. All right, so future character, just in case we don't know what that playfield might look like, these are examples of what that could look like. So it's open playfield, seating, potentially some hard court like 4-square tetherball or basketball for the students of the school itself, no lighting and no planned athletics. Now, West Ada does have a long history of partnering with youth leagues for practices and things like that. And I would assume those would occur on this site. But with no lighting, they would certainly be limited to accommodate the development agreement conditions. And so really, we're here to say we have no objections to the conditions of the development agreement. We are really pleased with the work that Alan did and the fact that any roadway construction would be dependent on a building permit application. We're in full agreement with that, mostly because ACHD does not know where that road needs to align. So it'd be very challenging to try to construct that. And our request is a recommendation for approval of the rezone being sent to council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the applicant or staff?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Grove, go ahead.
Mr. Adams, question with the grading from the top, which would be the south side, I guess, or Franklin, the north side of Franklin, which would be the south side of this project, down to where the school is, I mean, I'm not real great at elevations, but it looks like a significant amount. What does that look like and how does that impact this project?
Chairman, Commissioner Grove, great question. You are 100% right. So we show on this drawing, so this application is for the rezone. We're going to come in after this with a CZC and work with staff to do a play field. To do that, we would need to do a street buffer, the required street buffer. We would need to do a buffer to the existing residential. And there's also those high, the overhead power lines. So we would need to stay level as we come away from Franklin. And then we need to dive it down pretty quick. We've been talking to the district, like, do they want the students to have to come up some sort of stair ramp? Or do we take the field way down? I'm not sure we know yet. It's greater than a 30-foot drop from Franklin down to that school. So there will be some major earth moving activity in this field. We don't have that solution determined quite yet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Grace, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Adams, I noticed in the staff report there didn't appear to be any change in parking. Initially, I thought it was an athletic field and that was going to be a major concern of mine. But I guess I would just ask, do you see any issue with parking? Is there adequate parking for the intended use?
Yeah, Chairman, Commissioner Grace, thank you. So right now, so correct, the play field intended for school use. Clearly, youth sports are going to come use this for practices and things, right? Now, that is currently occurring on the baseball field, which is to the north of the property. And I think, Alan, your map probably showed that better. Actually, this map shows it. So on the left side of the screen, you can see the baseball field, right? That is there. The turf is horrible over there. They're doing their best, but they have no irrigation. They got gophers, terrible things. So there are some very brave coaches that do practices on that. And because it's outside of school hours, the parking has not been a concern to where West Ada has ever had to take any action. There's only 140 students at this facility. So there's very limited staff during the day. And then the maintenance office is empty after hours as well. And there's a significant amount of parking there as well. So we do not anticipate, under having unorganized type use, that there be any kind of parking impact.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And Mr. Clerk, do we have anybody signed up to testify?
Mr. Chair, we did not.
Anybody in chambers like to come up and testify? Have anybody online? I don't know if we even have anybody. Anybody raising their hand? All right. With that, I was going to say, it doesn't sound like there's anything to rebut or speak to, so we'll continue on with it. Somebody would like to give me a motion to close the public hearing portion for file number H 2022-0031 Meridian Play Academy Field.
So moved.
Second.
And moved and seconded to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0031. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this one seems to be pretty straightforward. If there's anybody would like to discuss it or make a motion, please feel free.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lorch, go ahead.
anytime we can add green space to our city, I think is a good thing. I'm prepared to make a motion unless anybody else has something to say.
Feel free. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move and recommend approval to City Council File Number H 2022-0031 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of July 21st, 2022, with no modifications.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve item number H 2022-0031. No modifications. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very
Chair.
much.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I didn't catch who seconded that.
I can second it.
Okay,
I thought Commissioner Grace did second it, so. That's okay. All right, and we will now move to agenda item number 6, which is 10-mile public storage. And we will begin with the staff report.
Let me get this queued up. Sorry. Are you looking at that? You're not seeing that, are you?
We are not, no.
Okay. Try it again. Sometimes I'm Zoom challenged.
Now we see.
All right, good. Thank you. Okay, this is an annexation and a zoning to IL. A site consists of 5.8 acres zoned RUT in the county located at 4065 North 10 Mile, which is between Ustick and West McMillan Road. There's no history on the project, obviously, because it's not in the city, but if you look at the map on the right, you'll see that this is almost adjacent to existing self-storage. The comprehensive land use map for this designates this as mixed use non-residential, which would be this kind of use. If you to the south and west is the city's wastewater treatment facility. I prepared this because this is complicated but very simple, and it's easier, I think, to demonstrate with graphics than it is to try to explain this to you. So the subject property is an elongated parcel presently containing a single family residence, and that's what you see here. It is north of an existing self-storage facility. So this right now is in the city, and this is zoned IL. It's called the Citadel 4 Storage 10 Mile. Between the existing self-storage, which is here, and the subject property, which is a little tricky to see, is a flag lot that's owned by the city. So this big square here is part of it. And then there's this little sliver right here. Hopefully you can see that. The flagpole type serves as access. The city owns it, serves as access to this piece here. It gives a farmer that's in this area access, and it also serves as access to the wastewater treatment plant. In September of 2021, the applicant requested a pre-app with the city to discuss expanding their existing self-storage, which again is down here. Same owner, owns both properties. As we talked about it, because of this flagpole lot, it was complicated trying to figure out how we were going to make this work, because we wanted to make sure we provided connectivity, and the city had some reservations with people crossing over their property and how difficult that would be. After a series of meetings, the solution that arrived was that they were going to reconfigure this access through a property boundary adjustment. So basically just a shifting of property lines. And that's what I'm showing on this graphic. So again, what you see down here is the existing flagpole parcel. What I've shown here in the red, if you can imagine, is what we're doing is we're basically doing a little parcel boundary adjustment to move it same width, still 25 feet wide, but we're basically taking it from here and moving it up to here. Now that's going to serve a few purposes. This is the graphic here, again, that I've annotated to try to describe this. The first thing that it will do is it will make this a cohesive development. They can fence the whole thing in. They can put their 2 buildings here. It's all within the same development. It will still provide access for the city. Public Works has been working with us on this. So Public Works Director is okay with this. He's been on board. It'll still provide access to all of the people that are presently giving access. But the more important thing is the thing that we really we wanted to make sure happened is that the properties to the north are in the county. Now, how long will they be in the county? We don't know. But 10 Mile is an arterial road. And as you probably know, our code says that if you are taking access from an arterial road, what we want you to do is eventually try to reduce the amount of direct accesses off of that road, particularly if you can reconfigure access internally. In this particular case, those northern properties, if we align the road like it is now we just created access for those if they read, or at least a secondary access for those if they redevelop in the future. So what would happen is now where this existing driveway is here, this will share with the existing. So it's all just still going to be one driveway with the existing self-storage. The access that is occurring right now for the road for the existing house will be closed. And this new access road will be created to the south. Again, all of it's going to be just done by administratively by a parcel boundary adjustment. And the city would then again take same amount of land, just different location. One thing that was a little complicated was that both the subject property and the adjacent city property are not in unincorporated are not in the city right now. So the city property is not in the city. We talked about that. The city at this point doesn't want to annex it. However, of course, the applicant does. Now that poses a problem because when you're doing a parcel boundary adjustment, you can't do a parcel boundary adjustment for two properties. One of them is in the city and one of them isn't. It was a bit of a perplexing dilemma, but the city attorney had a great idea. And what that was that we would make a condition of approval that they would have to do this parcel boundary adjustment before the annexation ordinance was recorded. So if the council were to approve this, then before they actually recorded it, they would be the applicant would go through, they would do this parcel boundary adjustment to see exactly what I've just shown you. And then once that was done, then they would record the annexation agreement. That would work. One of the conditions of approval that you've seen in your staff report is that the applicant is going to be on the hook to do all that surveying stuff. This is all being driven by the applicant at this point. And one of the reasons why the city doesn't want to annex is there's still a lot of property discussions going on with some property that we own over to the west, which I don't want to get into, but there's still a lot of discussions that there might be some property stuff going on, not this applicant, another applicant. So we're not sure yet what that alignment's going to look like. However, so the applicant is going to be on the hook to do all the surveying to make sure that it's surveyed correctly. The conditions of approval say that the applicant will have to build this road to, I believe, 20 feet wide with gravel, and the Public Works put a bunch of specified standards in there if you want to read it. There was two other things that staff wanted to see. There's still properties that are going to be directly to the north. Under our current code, the way that it works, if you are directly adjacent to a residential property, you have to put in a 25-foot residential buffer. Well, this doesn't really work because they're not really more adjacent to properties to the north because we've got this piece of land in between them and the new mini storage. Staff still thought that you probably should have some kind of mitigation just because of the possible visibility and that people have to look at this. So we are recommending as a condition of approval, a reduced buffer. So basically a 5-foot buffer. That's what you'd have to put around a parking lot, 5-foot landscape with trees. I think it's one every 30 feet or something like that with shrubs. The other thing is if you look at the elevations, we weren't super thrilled about this. Now, that said, the existing facility basically looks like this. And if you go out there and you look, this is exactly what you see. But just because that was there then doesn't mean that we want to continue doing that. So we thought there should be some kind of minimal level of design. We didn't want to make it super difficult for them, but we did want to make sure that there was a good design level. So the other condition of approval that you see in this staff report is that there's at least 2 different materials. There has to be some modulation and some undulation and some accent materials on the east facing building, which would be the one on 10 Mile, as well as the north facing building, which would be the one that's going to be visible to all the people that right now are residential to the north. Hopefully I explained that whole thing, which is really simple, but not, and I'll stand for any questions.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, would the applicant like to come forward? Good evening. If you want to give us your name and address for the record, and the floor is yours. Oh, hold on.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the commission, staff and residents. Aaron Anderson, representing Public Storage. Go. I'm not touching anything. Great. All right. Well, I wanted to start out by saying thank you to the commission for taking the time to hear our case tonight. And a special thank you to staff, particularly Alan, for all the hard work that he's put in on this project. First, some quick team introductions. So on our applicant team, we have our entitlement expert, which is Nicolette Womack. She's here with me tonight in the gallery. Our project architect is Stephanie Massey, and our civil engineers are Brandon McDougald and Connor Candrian. And then that person, that face up in the top left corner is me, which is apparently what I look like without facial hair. So now a quick introduction to Public Storage. So our company was founded back in 1972. So we have 50 years in business as of this year. So if you believe Wikipedia, we are the founders of the modern self-storage industry as you know it today. We are the largest owner-operator of self-storage in the world, with locations domestically as well as, I believe, in 5 European countries. We have nearly 3,000 locations in our portfolio, and you can imagine that number grows every month. And we grow our business in the following ways: through acquisition, where we buy functioning properties and rebrand them in our image; third-party management and new development. The third-party management piece would be the smallest chunk of that pie chart. We're also one of the few, if not the only, self-storage operators with a full in-house development team, which includes acquisitions, developers like me, architects, and civil engineers, all under the Public Storage umbrella. We operate in 39 out of 50 states, and at present we have 6 locations in the state of Idaho. 3 of those are in the city of Meridian. So it's important to highlight that the proposal that's before you guys tonight is considered an expansion. So it's not going to, once complete, it's not going to add to that total of 3. It's just going to make that third property larger than it is today. So I don't want to rehash too much of what Alan went into because his presentation was fantastic, but you may see some of the same kind of slides here. Taking a look at the project, we can see the 5-acre property, which we purchased in October of last year. So we closed escrow and we own this piece of land located along North 10 Mile Road. It's currently developed with a single-family home, which has been recently vacated by the former owner. Today, this property sits within the jurisdiction of Ada County, as you know. Directly south is one of our newest facilities, which was acquired in 2021. And you can clearly see that to the south of that red line in the aerial. So a quick timeline here. We started our formal process with staff back in October of last year. Following the pre-app, we ended up redesigning this facility as a single-story building. Our original proposal was a 3-story building. It was huge. So we held the neighborhood meeting in February where we did present the single-story option. Those who showed up, which some may be here tonight, seemed largely supportive of that single-story design, which remains fundamentally the same as it did back then tonight. Since we reduced the scale of the building, going from 3 stories to 1, we felt it prudent to go through another pre-app with staff to give them a chance to weigh in on that new design. Following that meeting, we made a formal application and ultimately ending up here before you tonight. So further context, you can see how this parcel fits into the city's future land use map. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Looking at the zoning map, you can see this site currently sits in Ada County and is zoned RUT. The entire block is essentially surrounded by City of Meridian, so it makes sense to absorb this particular parcel into your jurisdiction. This is one step towards filling in the missing puzzle pieces, so to speak. So further context, to see how this parcel fits into the city's future land use map. It remains consistent with the current uses because we have an operating storage facility directly to the south and another one adjacent to that. And this is consistent with the city's long-term vision for this particular area. So looking more closely, you can see what the present state of the property looks like and how it relates to our existing facility. That black dash line, of course, represents that access road that Alan went into great detail about. Here's the site plan. This was the original proposal with the access road bifurcating the two properties. And then the updated proposal, which we're presenting tonight, which is where we're pulling that property line down south. So we have one contiguous parcel. This configuration has many benefits for the city and for public storage. Alan highlighted many of them, but I'll go through the list here. So number one, it eliminates a curb cut from 10 Mile. It also allows for future access to the northern, as those northern parcels develop. It provides a path for public utilities that will benefit our project as well as future and current uses. It allows for uninterrupted access to the farmer who currently leases that farmland to the west. And again, it creates that contiguous boundary, which really makes this a true expansion of our existing facility. So it's worth noting, Alan mentioned a bit of this, but I'll go through the list again, that Public Storage has agreed to shoulder the cost burden for all this work. That includes the legal descriptions and survey, that curb cut removal and relocation, providing all the paving required to meet ACHD standards, and the grading of the access drive and the construction work that will take place along that entire length of road, all the way to that western property line boundary. And again, we're also going to bring in a water main as a part of our project. We're going to tap that off of 10 Mile. And ultimately, we're going to leave that in that access road. So future uses that develop to the north can grab utilities and not have to tap in the 10 Mile right of way again. So here's a quick look again at the current building elevations. This is a single story design. As Alan stated, we started with architectural features to match what we currently have existing to the south. And we're totally open to making adjustments to meet the conditions. The building will be fully enclosed, climate controlled, and no doors will be visible to the general public. This thing is completely enclosed. So those typical roll-up doors, that you're not going to see them on this kind of facility. So in closing, we reviewed the staff report and the conditions, and we accept them as presented. And with that, we are requesting the commission vote to recommend approval to the city council of our project tonight. We're here to answer any questions you may have, and thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the applicant or staff at this time?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Grove, go ahead.
always have questions.
That's okay. That's why we're here.
Mr. Anderson, question for you. With the architectural elements on the east side and the north side, would, I believe is what Alan had said, would you be open to continuing that on the west side as well?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Sure.
Thank you.
Commissioner Grace, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Anderson, with regard to the access road that will be now on the north side of the newly developed property, is there intended any access to the facility from that access road?
Absolutely not. No. So the whole intent was to, we had conversation with the ACHD and with Alan, and, limiting access points along 10 Mile is the goal. So there's an existing access point to that road as it exists today. And, this is not the greatest shaped parcel, as a developer getting this kind of geometry, it's not ideal. So there had to be an access point to serve this. I think it's a benefit that Public Storage is developing this piece because we have two access points that are already there. If we pull that parcel down, we can use those two access points to get throughout the property, the new part, the old part, and not need any new curb cuts along 10 Mile. So we'll be able to serve that whole facility from the 2 access points we have. And yeah, it works great operationally for us.
And then just to confirm, I think I heard what you say. So people don't drive up and there's not doors in maybe the traditional way I'm thinking about storage facilities. It's all interior.
Correct. Yeah, this is sort of that modern facility where, the drive up use, which is what's out there today. This is all fully enclosed. There'll be a couple of lobby doors. People pull up, they grab a cart, they put their stuff on the cart, they wheel inside. All those roll up doors are still there. They're just hidden behind the exterior walls.
Any further questions? All right. Mr. Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for public testimony?
Mr. Chair, some people signed in, but nobody marked they wanted to testify.
Anybody in chambers want to come up and testify? Anybody online raising their hand? I don't think so. No. Yes, sir. Come on up. Good evening. Please give us your name and address for the record and just speak right into the microphone there, and the floor is yours.
Yes, I'm John Wiskus. And I live at.
Yep.
This one or-
Either one. Yep.
Okay. All right. I'm John Wiskus and I live at 4255 North 10 Mile Road. And supportive of the project, but I'm not up to speed on all the details as this continues to move forward. But a couple questions I wanted to just throw out. One would be there is an existing drainage that Napa Meridian Irrigation has there. It's contiguous to the city's access road. What's the disposition of that? That would be one question. On the north side of the proposed road, I'm not sure it's a 20-foot access road that's going to get basically put on the north side of the property. And I'm thinking about the access. I know the farmer goes up and down that, is access requirements. There's a little bit of a jog there. The farmer's probably a short-term user of that road, but thinking about that and wondering if a 20-foot fence on that is going to allow access, particularly when you get to the jog. Trying to understand the 5-foot setback. So as I think about my neighbor who abuts this, is that fence on the north side of that city access road going to be right on the property line, or is it going to be set back? And then you'll have the 20-foot access road and then a 5-foot landscape buffer. Trying to just get the feel for that. Details are kind of hard to see on that drawing. I guess that's kind of trying to understand the access road and the irrigation issues that are going on there now. It's like a water line is going to go down that, which is great for future development. So just some questions. Okay. Don't necessarily need answers here, but take them offline too.
We'll try and get them. We'll try and get them answered this evening for you.
Okay. From tonight now, this will go to city council for final approval, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Anybody else like to come up and testify? No? All right, Alan, would you like to
I can
take a
answer.
stab at that?
Alan
Absolutely.
Tiefenbach. I can answer at least a couple of them.
Okay.
As far as the drainage, yeah, there was a question about that. There's a ditch that is running in between where the existing access road is now. There's a ditch. They're going to pipe it. We already had that discussion. As far as the 5-foot setback, the 5-foot setback is a landscape buffer. There's going to be a requirement for a buffer. That buffer would be on the landscape buffer would be on the direct outside of the building, because the road strip will be city property. So on the inside of the city property will directly adjacent to the building would be the landscaping. Public Works, sorry, Public Works is requiring the fence along is requiring the fence along the road, and they also want a gate on either side because they don't want the wrong people using it. I have the feeling that Connor is going to be able to do a better answering maneuverability for a farmer. I don't know. I don't know if you know about the jog and tractors or
Thank you, Alan. Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Can I go back to just to reference the site plan, Alan, just so we're all looking. at the same-
Sorry, sorry. I called you Connor. My apologies, Aaron.
Oh, I
Um,
thought you were talking about,
Yeah, give me a second here. I'll get you back up.
he is the engineer, so he is
Yeah.
It is, it's a 25-foot easement, but then there's a road within the easement, or is that the way that that's designed, or is it 25-foot?
well, it's 25 feet overall, right? Because so as the road exists today, it's 25 feet. So it's a like for like, right? If we're getting 25, we're giving up 25 on the north side. So the road functions today. Now, a large part of that 25 feet is taken up by that irrigation ditch. So the farmer does not have 20 feet of total width or 25 feet of total width to drive. So this area north, and I'm just trying to make sure I understand the question correctly. Is it that the turning radius for the tractor may not be able to function? Well, I'll put it to you like this. We believe that the road at 20 feet is plenty wide, even with the jogs. But what we could do is demonstrate through a diagram, right? So we can have our civil engineer go back to the office, run a simulation where that tractor goes down the road. And if for any reason we see it not being able to make the turn movements, then we can make adjustments. As far as the fence location, I mean, yeah, it'll be right on the property line, but the road is intended to be gravel. It's only a temporary solution. So there's going to be no curbs, gutters. In the future, when that develops and development does move north, I'm sure it will look a whole lot different, right? Somebody's going to pave it. They're going to put gutters in. They're going to put asphalt down. This is just sort of a temporary solution to kind of fix the muddy condition that's out there today and make it traversable by the farmer and only the farmer, because that gate on the 10-mile side is going to prevent anybody from accessing that road. So it's really just a one-way road for that tractor. It's not going to be two-way traffic, and you're not going to have traffic jams on that gravel road. So
Thank you for the explanation.
Yep.
And if there's anybody else who would like to testify, sir, if you want to come on up.
My name's Danny Madison. I'm at 4115 North 10 Mile. The property just north of this development here. So the only thing I wanted to, similar to John's, sort of just a comment and possibly a question, is in the staff report, it states that there's a 20-foot wide access road, and then it has some requirements on what it would be constructed of. And then it says on page 12, section J, it says the north and south sides of the new access road shall be fenced and a gate should be installed. So the question was, if you're looking at the what they refer to, which is let's see, what is it, 11 UDC 11-3A-7, which is the fence guideline for Meridian. It has a few examples of what the fence might be, but I was curious if we could get any illustration that shows what that fence might look like, or if it's going to be closed or open picket style, and the height too.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, sir. Alan, you want to try and,
I have to double check real quick the staff report, and let me see if it gives Aaron might be able to answer quicker than me. I'm looking to see if the staff report actually, if Public Works required us, I think they required a specific kind of fence. I'm double checking.
okay.
I do not know your code as well as you, Alan. I'm sorry. But
Not
Well-
code, it's what Public
Sure,
Works
sure,
said
sure.
to do.
Well, the question is, this is going to remain Ada County. So is there a different fence standard for Ada County that we could adhere to? I mean, it seems like a question that we could certainly answer post-hearing, but I'm not sure if I'd be able to tell you.
So it's my understanding that
It
there'll
won't
be
be.
a fence on both sides of the
Correct.
road?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And our
That I
property,
missed.
the building sort of acts as a natural barrier, right? We're
Yeah.
gonna back right up to that landscape buffer. And then where it's open, I mean, the nature of storage is we want to keep people's stuff safe. So the fence really helps us secure the property and sort of serves the purpose of putting the fence on both sides of the road. It's the north side, I think that's still in question.
Okay.
But we're open to putting in whatever is allowed that sort of satisfies the concerns. Public storage is.
It just says fencing. I mean, generally 6 foot, but I don't know the requirements.
Sure, like a 6-foot wrought iron fence. That would be my best first guess, but we'd have to confirm that with Ada County.
Mr. Chairman, I would just add, I don't think it's going to be a code requirement. This is going to be a condition in the development agreement. And it's what the Department of Public Works will require from the city. It won't be an Ada County requirement. It's going to be a city requirement via the development agreement. So, between now and the time the city council considers this, if we want to provide more clarity on the type of fencing or height of fencing, we can do so, but it'll be a contractual obligation, not a code requirement.
Thank you.
Not sure if the neighbor had a preference, if they're right directly next door, about what kind of fencing they would prefer to see there.
Sir, if you want to come back, go ahead and come back up. Generally, we don't do that, but come on up. And again, the question was if there's, some sort of preference to this,
Yeah.
chain link, wrought iron.
Sure, I have no desire to see the road or anything like that. So as tall and closed as anyone's, agreeing to would be okay. There is another neighbor west of my property that was here initially and then left. So I could kind of loop him in and suggest that he shows up and just, because I don't know what his preference is. I can't speak on his, but my preference and didn't you hear Larry mention before he left that that he wanted a taller fence if possible? Yeah, so
Okay.
just depends on what's allowed and what's doable, right?
Alan, go ahead.
My only comment on that would be, right now, there's a requirement for a 5-foot wide perimeter landscape strip with trees and shrubs. The trees would still work, but it would make sense to put shrubs in if we're gonna have a 6-foot fence there. But if we were gonna just go with a solid fence, I might suggest then we just keep with the trees. But I don't see the need for shrubs because you're not gonna see them.
You're referring to the south?
Well, the requirement of the requirement is that along the outside of that building B or building A, they have to put in a 5-foot wide landscape strip, which would have 1 per 35 and some shrubs, right? If we were putting up a fence, all the people to the north are no longer seeing those shrubs. They're only seeing the trees. So I'm not sure. That's certainly up to the purview of the planning commission, but I don't know how super helpful it'll be to put a bunch of shrubs behind a fence.
Well, I don't have a preference on what the south fence should be, but the north side, which is on my property, is the only one I'm concerned with.
That's what I mean. If I said south, I mean on the
Oh, okay.
the building.
Yep.
The building is right because the building is going to be on their property. So the building on the outside of that building would have to have a 5-foot landscape strip with trees and shrubs. But if there's going to be a fence in front of that between you and them,
Sure.
you're not seeing the shrubs. It
Okay.
might just be a better idea to, or whether or not there's any use for the landscape strip, I don't know.
Yeah, and knowing that this is kind of farm access, the least amount of stuff that you can put on either side of that, it's going to help farm equipment. I'm an old farm boy myself, so I can see, if you're trying to get in there with a 1-ton baler or something, that's going to be a little tricky.
Putting in a fence may not make that, that solid fence wasn't a requirement. I originally was thinking they were going to be doing chain link fencing, which is why I was more concerned about the landscaping. But if they're going to do the architecture on the buildings, I don't know what the purpose is then of having the fence if we're going to do it. Sorry, I don't know what the purpose is of having the landscape strip if we're going to put a solid fence in front of it.
I would agree with that too. And that's, if there's a preference to anything, I would recommend you can email about this particular case to, clerk@meridiancity.org and then just note what what it is that you're emailing about, and they'll make sure to forward that on to the city planning staff as well as make it part of the public record.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
the latest, I'm sorry, you come on up because you might answer the question.
I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to interject before we close the public hearing. To make sure I'm clear, in public storage, we can work with the neighbors between now and city council and really resolve this. And by the time we're ready for the city council staff report, we can have that baked into the report. That would be our goal. So.
Yep.
Well, after tonight, we'll give them our contact info and. work
Okay.
with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Grace, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I was just going to ask, the latest discussion raised a question in my mind about the gate on the 10-mile side of this parcel of land. Is that something that the farmer is going to have to open? And does that mean that farming equipment is out there on 10 Mile Road while he does that?
I I was gonna say, I can field that one because I've seen it happen. Yes, there's, right now, there's actually a gate that they have to open to get into that facility. Currently, it does sit back a little ways from the road, but there is farm equipment that has to turn into there. So, I mean, we're still kind of a farming community, but the answer to that is yes. Now, whether or not they keep it locked, they keep it open, closed, or whatever, that's completely up to them, but there will be a gate installed. So Alan, go ahead.
Public Works condition of approval says to offset the gate 50 feet from 10 Mile Road right away.
There you go. Perfect.
I just want to make sure the farmer's safe.
Yep. That's a good question. So, and like I said, I mean, I've actually seen equipment on 10 Mile going into that. So. All right. Is anybody else like to testify? Anybody online's raising their hand? Would the applicant like to come back up and okay, signifying no? So with that, if somebody would like to give a motion to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0016.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing portion for file number H 2022-0016. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. With that, who would like to go first?
I will, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
So both the applicant and city said that this road is a temporary solution to other things that may happen going towards the north. And so I actually support what Alan said. The applicant should have his fence because they want their security. But to add some unnecessary landscaping when it's all just going to change in the near future anyway, seems like a extraordinary expense to go to, especially if you're going to have a fence on the north portion of it and the south portion of it. And the neighbors on the other side don't even enjoy that part of it. Most likely it's going to be developed within the next 5 to 10 years and all that is going to be changed. And once you put a tree in, sometimes it's really hard to get a tree out. So I would definitely, I don't know if it's in the approval portion of it, but I would support having no landscaping buffer, just the 25-foot road, or if you have to make it 25 feet. And whomever is responsible just to make sure the weeds are down. And I would assume Public Works would have a high interest in that.
Staff doesn't have any opposition to that. We were actually doing it for the benefit of the neighbor that's here tonight.
Yeah, and I'm on the same page as you. I mean, if we've got fence on both sides and essentially we want to make sure that that farm equipment can get through there without any issues, I'd say that, you know, having the least amount in there as possible would be good, you know, to say the least. So especially if the fence can be something other than chain link or something like that to cut down dust or anything that's going to drift over into the northern parcels and stuff like that. So I can't imagine that there's going to be a lot of traffic on there, but at the same time, you know, I mean, if they're planting weed or something like that, you get a lot of trucks that are going to be up and down that road for a small period of time. Same with hay or anything else. So anything we can do to help cut down on that piece of it would probably be good. So if anybody wants to throw that in with their motion, that would be great. Anything else?
Mr. Chair.
Right ahead.
The only thing that I think I would want to have added would be the additional architectural standard on the west, just in case, you know, it's visible from whatever happens with that city parcel in the future, that we don't have to have an eyesore there. I know it has no purpose right now, but just long term. So that'd be the only piece that I would want to have added in. I think this actually cleans up some of that 10-mile piece. What you were talking about with the farm equipment, now having the setback a little bit different. I think this actually solves multiple current and long-term issues. So looks good to me.
Anybody else? I'll always take a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to defer to Commissioner Lorcher based on her maybe amendment, but I do support it.
Okay.
I couldn't say it, but I support it.
Very good. So as Commissioner Lorcher, you want to take a stab at a motion? So
Commissioner Grove, what did you say about what did you say, architectural?
Extend the architectural elements around to the west side in addition to the north and east side.
Of the property?
Correct. So it's already in the condition of approval from staff to do the east and north.
Gotcha. Okay, I think I'm ready.
feel free. Thank you.
All
very
right.
much.
After considering all staff and applicant public testimony, I move to recommend approval of City Council File Number H 2022-0016 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of July 21st, 2022, with the following modifications. No landscaping buffer since the road is temporary and gravelled, and extend the architectural elements to the west side of the property.
Real quick, the no landscaping buffer only pertains to the north side of the gravel road, correct?
Correct. Do I need to say it again?
I don't think so, as long as you agree with that. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve file number H 2022-0016 for 10 Mile Public Storage with their aforementioned modifications. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, and the next item that we have, thank you all very much. Next item that we have is file number H 2022-0040 for Hickory Warehouse. And I will need to recuse myself because my employer owns the building, and I will turn it over to Commissioner Grove.
All right. So we will go ahead and continue with staff report for file number H 2022-0040 for Hickory Warehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the commission. This is a application for a conditional use permit. Site consists of 10 acres of land zoned IL. This must be IL night. I just thought about it. Located at 1135 North Hickory Avenue at the northwest corner of East State Street and North Hickory Avenue, right across the street from the Sensi campus. So there's a boundary adjustment to combine 4 lots into one that happened. That included a vacation of easements that ran on either side of the internal lines. Then there was a certificate of zoning compliance for a 207,000 square foot multi-tenant building. There was also a conditional use permit approved in 2021 to approve an indoor recreation facility. This is the approved site plan. This is a conditional use permit to allow mechanical equipment emissions, shipping and or delivery or other outdoor activities within 300 feet from a budding residential district. So in 2022, the applicant requested final inspections on this, completed a CZC. During the inspections, staff discovered that the building architecture differed from the approved CZC elevations. That's something that we're going to deal with separately, not part of this. However, we also noticed that there was a large mechanical dust collector on the west side of the building that was not reflected on the CZC site plan. It was shown on the mechanical plans, but when staff reviews CZCs, we don't look at mechanical plans. We don't look at them really in building permits either. So that's how it got built. While discussing the discrepancies between some of the issues with the architecture it was built and what was actually done, staff also discovered that there was an error in the CZC approval. Loading bays are not allowed to be within 300 feet of residential. Talks about outdoor activity. Staff at the time, which I will vouch was me, did not interpret indoor, like those indoor kind of loading pods, as outdoor activity. However, I was wrong, and that does mean outdoor activity. So again, I'll cop to my mistake, which is why we're doing this CUP. Later determined, yep, Alan made a mistake. So now I'm trying to fix this, and they're working with us very effectively to do this. The applicant submitted a narrative which said that there was a noise study that was done with the mechanical equipment running full bore. You can see that here. So on the top left there is that mechanical equipment. bottom left is what you're looking at with the little loading pods where you back the trucks in. And then the east there, that's just a picture of what you're seeing in between the apartments and the building, which clearly is less than 300 feet. Applicants submitted a narrative, said they ran a noise study while they were running this equipment, and it registered at 62 decibels from the property line. Just to give you that in context, City of Meridian Parks says that if you're having amplified equipment in their parks, it has to be less than 62 decibels from the property line. 60 decibels is roughly the sound of a normal conversation. That and the apartments are, I think I figured they're about 30 feet beyond that. The applicant is going to install 8-foot high steel columns, which you see on the bottom here. You can still see the equipment. They're also putting in a metal acoustic decking, which I'm assuming helps to reduce probably the vibrations, but applicant would probably correct me. Applicant notes the business hours are 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. Staff definitely supports this. They support the mechanical enclosure. We do think it'll help. But if you look again here, you'll see there's a land. So this what you see here is a city pathway. You do have trees there, but you can see they're not super thick and they don't really do anything to not see the loading bays that I allowed. So staff is recommending that the applicant put in a combination of 8-foot high opaque fencing and additional evergreen landscaping, including trees and shrubs. This is worded kind of specifically. So this will be installed in the vicinity of the pathway along the western building elevation and northwest property corner, sufficient to provide visual screening of the equipment and loading bays. Fencing and landscaping may have breaks and be clustered and grouped to maximize screening efficiency and produce a more natural appearance. So what that was all doing, it was saying the applicant, if they want to, can put a fence all the way along the property line, which could be costly. We would still want to have at least one break there for the pathway. Or they could break it up to make it most efficient, just so that the apartments and all that sort of a offset screening of those doors. Again, we're trying to work with the applicant so they can do the whole thing, or they can break it up and put in some natural plantings just to try to soften that down a little more. With that, I will take any questions.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? Mr. Vice Chair, may I ask a question?
Let's wait till after the
We have
applicant.
to ask the-
Josh Herschel with Cushing Terrell, 800 West Main Street, Suite 800, Boise, Idaho. As Alan mentioned, it's already constructed, a building that was allowed in an industrial zone. We met all the CZC requirements at the time. Just to note a little bit, when the owner purchased this property, it was CG next to him. And this would have been allowed with the CG zone, but it got rezoned to residential after they had purchased this project. So that changed during the time of when they purchased it to when they built the building. We're in full agreement, the owner's in full agreement with the staff report and recommendations, willing to either do a fence, landscape buffer. We are going to do the enclosure on the dust collector. We have had it balanced again, and we keep monitoring the testing of the noise to make sure it does not get over to the property line as well. And that is on the property line. That's not to the residents. We didn't walk on their property to test the noise decibels. So stand for any questions, but we agree with staff report. Owner agrees with fencing or landscaping along the west side as well. And the screen wall around the dust collector will be installed very soon.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Lorcher, you had a question.
I do. I'm looking at this picture here where I see the loading bays. And then the apartments to the left-hand side. And the trees, which are immature right now, which will eventually mature and get bigger. Where are you suggesting a fence? Based on this picture? On the concrete and asphalt of the warehouse, or on the grassy area by the bike path?
Alan Tiefenbach. The language reads a little more vague because we didn't give them a specificity. The reason why is because we wanted to make sure the landscape architect could make sure the trees weren't going to die if they put a fence in it, because then it would be on the north side or on the other side of the fence. But basically it would be in the vicinity of that landscape strip on the inside part of the pathway. So we'd want people who are walking down the pathways to also not be looking at an entire building full of loading bays and mechanical screening.
All right, so one.
It'd be in that landscape strip that you're looking at, somewhere like right about, so if you're seeing where that tree is, I'm sorry, the tree, where you're seeing that truck, it would be somewhere placed within that landscaping strip. Again, it's sort of at their discretion to make sure that they get the most natural appearance and be able to preserve the landscaping.
Has anybody asked the tenant?
Of the apartment complex?
Yeah.
I have not asked the tenants of the apartment complex.
And the owners were notified. Nobody showed up during the neighborhood meeting or anything. Our preference, and I'm speaking for the ownership side, would be to put it close to the pathway as possible, just to help secure their piece too, so that people from the apartments are already having them walk their dogs over on the grass and leaving dog stuff. So their preference would be to be more close to the pathway to help screen that from the apartments next door.
So you're suggesting that so with their white truck and the
Yeah, so,
then the trees, then a fence.
and a fence and the
Then
pathway.
then the path, and then they would have kind of their grassy landscape by the apartment.
Yes, and to be truthfully honest, we'll have to work with ACHD because there is a drainage easement through there and there is a canal through there. So we have to make sure that we can build the fence on top of that. We can do evergreens and other stuff to help screen it as well, but there is other stuff that runs underneath that pathway right there too, that we have no control over because it's an easement through for a drainage and canal.
That's why we didn't want to say only fence. We
Right.
wanted to make sure they had some options to work with.
So I'm assuming if you are looking at a fence, you're looking at a solid vinyl fence as opposed to chain link or,
It could be chain link with slats. Alan actually didn't recommend vinyl just because they're ugly. So it might be a chain link with a black slat in it.
chain link fence with black slats is not ugly.
He didn't specify what the fence would be. So it's options. It could be evergreens. It could be heavier landscape.
Can I ask another one? Sorry.
Go ahead.
How long have you been operating this business as it is right now?
So there's only currently one tenant in the building. It's Sawtooth Concepts. They're a cabinet shop and they're on the very north end where the dust collector is that you can see. And they've been in there for 4 or 5 months now. I'd have to double check. And we have not heard any complaints from the neighbors.
And we don't know the occupancy of those apartments, right?
We don't. There are 2 other tenants that are getting ready to move into this space. And as Alan mentioned, one is K1 Speed. It's an indoor go-kart track that's already been approved by your commission through a different CUP. And then there's another warehouse user that is only going to maybe bring 1 or 2 trucks in a week.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair.
And technically, the way you read the code is that if you are unloading trucks, not if you're backed up to a dock door. So if you have an enclosed semi that's backed up to the dock door, that's not 300, that doesn't have to meet the 300 feet. It's if you have a forklift outside unloading a flatbed, and that's the 300 feet. So that's kind of the kicker on this, is if they're back straight up into the dock shelters, which they're going to install when each tenant comes, you meet the current code for the offset to residential.
Alan,
The way I read it.
that was my interpretation, but my interpretation was not deemed to be the correct one by somebody with a whole lot more experience than me.
Commissioner Grace.
Mr. Chairman, just going off some of the questions that were asked, what's the primary purpose of the fence? Is it a visual barrier or a noise barrier?
I don't think it would do, Alan Tiefenbach, I don't think it would do much for noise. I mean, some would make the argument that landscaping does help somewhat. It's more visual for the people in the apartments, for people walking on the pathways, that they're not seeing trucks parked in. Again, the code says you're not supposed to have that pointed at apartments. So
And I
it's
asked,
more visual.
Okay, thank you. And I asked because it may be moot at this point, but I mean, what's the fence going to do for people on the third floor of the apartment? But we're past, that's sailed probably. Right?
Unfortunately, the loading bays have already been approved and I can't recommend a 30-foot high fence.
Okay, just wondering. Thank you.
I'm trying to protect the pathway as best as I can.
I have a question for you real quick. So in Alan's report, he has stated that the requirement for the fence is that it does not have to go all around the entire property. What is your intention with that?
So I can't speak fully on, because I'm the architect of it, I can't speak for the owner and spend their money. But they want to comply, you know, they're a huge landowner, lots of campus, you know, everything. And it's not a Sensi project. It's not that, it's complete different ownership than Sensi. But they want to comply with the code. They want to be good stewards of the city. So most likely they'd be willing to put the fence all the way down if it needed to be, more from a security standpoint and to keep people off from wandering into a loading dock area from the residents, just because they don't want people walking their dogs and everything else with truck traffic right next to it. But I can't speak 100% to the extent that they're willing to do. So
I guess my question more to Alan than to you is, if their intent is not to have a fence for the sake of security for their property, would dense landscape along the pathway be sufficient instead of a fence? I feel like with the explanation of where the fence is going to be located in relationship to the pathway, it detracts from the pathway, and it essentially dilutes what is there, and has an unintended consequence of improving but also detracting from what is installed. I mean the screening around the dust collector, I think that's great. I think you could probably find a way to make it look attractive even with whatever, you know, final design you put on it. I think that you get creative and make it visually maybe not appealing, but at least not an eyesore for anyone, not only who lives there, but anyone using that pathway system. You know, you know what you're doing, you know that, you know, you're going to be a part of the community and you want people to look at it nicely. So I'm not worried about that. I'm just concerned with the fence. And if they're not going to do a full fence, can we work with them to do different, I guess?
Alan Tiefenbach. Staff was somewhat meek on this condition because the condition was being imposed because we approved something that we shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I was trying to not make a condition that was going to be too cumbersome on the applicant, and fencing is expensive. Ideally, I think that evergreen screening and landscaping there would be probably better. I was trying to give the applicant some options to be convenient for the applicant.
knowing the owner of it, they'd probably go for the landscaping side of it, but I can't speak for the ownership group of it. I know Sam Johnson is on, that's part of the ownership group. If he wants to talk during public testimony, he can, but that's kind of the best route I could go on that one.
Mr. Chairman, just follow up. Is that pathway exclusive to the apartment complex, or is that part of a larger?
No, sir, that is a regional pathway for the city.
All right. Well, I'll save my comment to when we maybe discuss it.
I have one more question, Mr. Vice Chair. Who is responsible for the maintenance of the green space from the apartment to the curb? Is your tenant, is your building ownership responsible up to the pathway? And then the apartments on the other side?
I'd have to look at exactly where our property line is. I think it's, I don't know if you remember, Alan.
If, I can't remember if it's an easement or a property line, I'm sorry. In general, if there's an easement and the pathway is in the applicant's property, then they're responsible for the pathway within the easement. If the pathway is off of the property lines somewhere else, then unless there's an actual, some kind of development agreement, generally the city is going to maintain the pathway.
Didn't
But it's sort of like sidewalks in front of your house.
Right.
You have to sweep your own sidewalks.
and didn't you say there was a utility easement in this greenway? Greenways?
There's a drainage canal that goes down, and then there's part of a ACHD drainage too that goes in. They have been maintaining everything that we've planted to date. So
So with that stuff that's underneath, are you allowed to plant more trees?
there is a certain amount of stuff you can plant, and as you can see, there's actually light poles, and they're pretty close. They're right off the edge of it. The pathway is almost right down that easement. I wish I had a better site plan that I could show you, sorry. But this applicant will maintain anything that's on their property. And they already doing it, and so, and it's all irrigated, everything else, so drip lines. Like I said, if Sam still on wants to talk during public testimony as the applicant, he can too.
Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, we do have a hand raised from Sam Johnson online.
Vice Chair, are you taking public testimony now?
We'll go ahead and jump to public testimony. Yes, sorry.
Mr. Johnson, you can unmute.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes, if you could just give your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, Sam Johnson at 2701 East Pine Avenue in Meridian, Idaho, 83642. I'm
Mr. Johnson,
representing
could
the
you
owner.
speak up just a little bit? You are a little quiet.
Okay,
All right.
let me, is that any better? Let's,
A little.
my laptop, somebody in my IT department needs to help me with that. I'll speak up here. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm representing Hot 2 LLC, who owns the property. So yes, I guess this property is 4 lots that we combined into one to build the warehouse. It's been zoned light industrial for decades, even before we bought it 12 years ago. There is a separate lot that this pathway runs on top of now, but before the pathway was there and before we developed it, there was a drainage swell for ACHD that took the water and runoff from State Avenue. And that's how they dealt with some drainage issues there. There's also some irrigation pipes that run north-south, and about halfway through our property, they dump into a drainage ditch that's open in the apartment property, and that ditch runs west. So we with ACHD's blessing and a license agreement, they allowed us to pipe that and put that drainage swell in an underground drainage facility. So yes, there are some restrictions on what can and can't be put on top of that. I have to look at exactly where it is placed. That 10-foot wide pathway was a requirement from the city, part of the regional pathway plan, and it is completely on our property. And I believe the west boundary, or the west side of that asphalt pathway, is fairly close to the property line between us and the apartments. One question I've never really asked, and we probably don't have an answer tonight, is not quite sure why the apartment complex was not required to put up a fence along that property line. But we are completely willing to put up a fence because we've seen increased traffic of people using that loading dock area and that space behind the warehouse to walk their dog, whatever it is. So we're completely willing to fence that entire our western boundary, but we would jog it around the pathway. The path, we would prefer to have the fence on the east side of that pathway, right along where those light poles are shown. Again, we are also willing to add some additional landscaping, but we're willing to work, and we appreciate Alan's willingness to give us some flexibility to figure this out, but we don't have specifics as of today.
Mr. Johnson, question I guess would be, is the intent, or would your preference be to have essentially a security fence that surrounded the entire property, or to do minimal fencing or no fencing, I guess would be the third option there?
We would prefer to have some fencing, but I'm not necessarily worried about a solid fence. It's more of a security issue, and it would just be that western side of the property, not the entire property.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any further public comments? I don't see anyone else online, and I don't see anyone else in the room, so I guess we're able to have you come back up and close out before we close up the hearing.
Commissioners, Vice Chair, thank you for looking at this. Alan, thank you for all your support and helping us work through this. I don't think we have any other comments from what Sam just said. We're willing to work with the city and planning staff to make sure that it's right and everybody's happy and appease our neighbors. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, at this time, could I get a motion to close the public hearing for file number H 2022-0040 for Hickory Warehouse?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, close the public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, all those opposed say nay. All right, public hearing's closed. Anybody have comments that they would like to share? Or
Sure. Mr. Chairman, it seems like I thought you made a really good comment and about the potential for a natural growth hedge or something like that. If we are at this point just trying to salvage the integrity of the path, that would make some sense. But I was also concerned about the potential for security. It is a multi-use or multi-family apartment, children. I think that there's a potential for security there. Probably a fence provides more security than hedges would, but not entirely. And so to some degree, we are where we are. And I think the commission has to acknowledge that or recognize that. But I do like salvaging the integrity of the pathway with more of a natural growth type barrier, so long as it doesn't affect the security.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Commissioner Lorcher, go ahead.
So when the applicant got their permission to build the building, the plot, the parcel to, I don't know which direction we're looking in, but next to it where the apartments was CG. And they followed the rules, and I appreciate that Alan is, working with them to fix things, but it feels a little like a bait and switch where it's all of a sudden everything's fine, and now we have to add all this investment to kind of fix something that may or may not be broken. Nobody is complaining yet. pathway to add either, I mean, I would support more landscaping than a fence. I think a fence, especially a chain link fence with black stuff in it, is just as bad, if not worse, than vinyl. It would kind of inhibit the whole openness of the whole point of having the pathway in the first place by encumbering some like a tunnel. And then it becomes a collector of possible dog excrement and garbage, and who's going to take care of that? And the way it looks right now, and having it open and having it, once the trees get mature, to be able to enjoy this pathway, even though there's a warehouse to the side, it's not your visual point, it's the pathway. So I understand that the city is following the codes, and the applicant, thank you for, working with them. I would not support a physical fence, but more of a landscape fence, to be able to blend in to the openness of the project that is there right now.
So I think what I would recommend is allowing this to continue forward, but allowing the applicant and staff to find the desired outcome, because essentially if it's going to come down to what the applicant wants to do with the fence, and how they install that. Alan, you have a comment? Sorry, I turned in and didn't see you there.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
just to clarify, when you say moving forward, you're the decision maker on this. It's a conditional use.
Sorry, I did not phrase that correctly, but yes, approve it, and have the final details in terms of how much fencing goes in or not go in, because I mean, that's how it's already worded, is they get to make that decision. So I think just having that communication continue.
Purposely flexible like that. You could, which depending on which way you argue it, it's purposely flexible.
So I think our intent here has been relayed to staff and the applicant. So I can't make a motion, but that's kind of where I'm hearing, where we're at.
I don't, but I was going to take a stab at it unless you feel like you got
Mr.
one.
I have one if you.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, we have a comment over here.
Mr. Vice Chair and Commissioners, before we do that, I just wanted to, actually, something that our planner just mentioned a moment ago. The alternatives you had before you, I just noticed a few minutes ago, includes language about recommendations to the city council. That's not accurate. This is a decision for the commission. So when you do make your motion, whether it's to approve or not, it's not a recommendation to the council. It's an action either to approve or deny. That's your prerogative tonight. Thank you.
Okay, can I try this?
Commissioner Lurch, go ahead.
After considering all staff and applicant testimony, I move to recommend approval to the city, well, it's not to the city council, approval of the conditional use permit of file number H 2022, am I in the right one? 004? 0, as presented in the staff report for the hearing date of July 21st, 2022, with the following modifications. Working with the city of Meridian, the applicant, for the best landscaping buffer for both parties.
Do we have a second?
Mr. Chairman, a second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, all those opposed say nay. And Commissioner Seal is abstaining from this, and so that motion has passed. And we're almost ready to close out, but before we do, I just wanted, since I still have the chair for a second here, before I pass it back over, just let all you know, it will most likely this will be my last night for the commission, but I will be on call until my replacement is in place. I was recently promoted and will have a lot of time constraints moving forward. So I would just like to say thank you for having me on the commission. I'll still be around and possibly be around in the next few meetings, but would hopefully not be in attendance unless we're not able to hit quorum. So with that, I'll hand it back over to Chairman Seal.
Thank you very much. The first comment I'll make is to Mr. Johnson, who's hopefully still on the phone, that the audio problems were on our side because I know you have a very crackerjack IT team working for you. Which is kind of funny because I am on the IT team, so, which is why I had to recuse myself. So, and as Commissioner Grove said, we will be looking for a new vice chair, so that will be probably part of the next commission meeting as we discuss that. So we'll let those that are absent know that as well. And at this time, I'm looking for one more motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.